Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about the Heretic Manticore X OTF knife. I am going to jump right into what most other reviews have not done with this knife, and I'm going to talk about testing. So I have actually tested this knife extensively. I've used it in daily tasks. And I want to get right into that because there's some really cool stuff about this knife that you're not going to get just by, rehashing the specs and talking about how it fits in your hand. So one of the things that I love about this knife when I started testing it was the fact that this has a recurve blade. In my opinion, this is one of the best shapes for a user knife, like a daily carry knife, because it's so good at so many things. So when you're cutting with this knife, that reverse curve to the blade bites into things. If you're cutting rope or cardboard or something like that, it doesn't want to slide out of what you're cutting. It wants to bite back into it and really give you a good purchase on it and cut. As Jave Nielsen says, nothing cuts like a recurve. Magnacut blade on this particular one. This is the Smoky Mountain Knife Works blue carbon fiber version of this. It's an exclusive for Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Really cool about that. I'm going to give you some pricing info at the end of the video, so don't skip that because there's something important that people need to know about this knife. So 400 cuts in my edge retention test, and it was still going strong. Excellent edge retention on the CPM Magnacut blade that is on this model. The trigger on this knife is both very good and very bad. So when you have an OTF knife that has a shallow trigger, like is on a Microtech or something like that, where the ramp is pretty narrow this way, it's not very steep this way, you have to have more aggressive jimping on there so that your thumb doesn't slip off of it when it's wet or slippery or something like that. This has that. It's easy to open and close. The problem is that it's so aggressive that when you're cutting with it and you're gripping it like this, when I was cutting through a cardboard tube, which was very tough, it was actually kind of uncomfortable on my hand. I didn't notice it when I was doing my sharpness or my edge retention testing, so it's not terrible, but it is, it could be a little bit better. A way to get around that is like what Benchmade has done with the Shootout and make more of a ramp rather than a flat kind of low trigger. So potential issue, but not a terrible issue. The glass breaker on this does work. I tested it. It works quite well. You can see I left a little scratch on my aluminum anodizing there when I tested it, but it works great. The pocket clip when it came was too loose. It didn't hold enough tension to hold it in my pants that I was comfortable with on such an expensive knife because I didn't want to lose it. So I did increase the tension by bending that pocket clip more. I took it off and bent it more. You can see I kind of bent it a little bit too much and it has almost a kink to it. It still works fine, but that is a potential issue with the pocket clip. Yours might be fine. Mine needed a little bit of bending to tension it, but it works good now. Worth mentioning that this was not very sharp from the factory. So when I got it, pulled it out, went to use it the first couple times, didn't have a great edge on it from the factory. I sharpen all my knives anyway, so not a big issue for me, but if you want to pull it out and use it right away, it does kind of come dull, which is kind of lame for a knife that's this expensive, but was not a deal breaker from me. I do want to mention the internals on this because on the internals of this knife are some really cool things that make me recommend this over a lot of other OTF knives. The trigger up here on this knife is actually sliding on ball bearings that are embedded into the aluminum handle. What that means is that there is less friction between the trigger and the body of the knife, meaning that it's easier to slide that trigger and it's easier to pop the blade out. That is one reason that they can run a larger blade on this knife than most OTFs and still not have any trouble getting it to pop out. On my Hogue compound, it's a little easier to slide, but not much. But you can see this is quite a bit of a larger blade than the Hogue. Do a quick size comparison because we're talking about that. Here's a Microtech Ultratech. Here's a Benchmade Shootout, right? You can see this is just quite a bit of a bigger knife. If I line them all up together at the end there, this is almost an inch longer than any of these other ones. I like that because I think it is more useful for me from a daily carry perspective and a user perspective. If you don't like a large knife, you might not like that. I really, really do. The other thing that's cool about the internals on this knife is that the lock flippers that are inside of here are captured in the aluminum handle. So when you take this knife apart, those little lock springs don't spring out and fly everywhere and lose themselves so that you can't put the knife back together. This knife is very clearly designed to be used and serviced by the end user, which is a wonderful thing, and it should be how all OTF knives are designed, in my opinion. Let's get a quick weight. I have not weighed this yet. We'll do it on camera here. So this is only 4.2 ounces. Given the fact that this is such a large knife, I'm actually pretty happy about that. This does have the carbon fiber on it, so this is a little bit lighter than one if you had the aluminum on both sides. Again, this is the Smoky Mountain Knife Works exclusive with the blue carbon fiber, which I'm hoping this comes out well in the video, but this is a spectacular looking knife. It's kind of a subtle blue, shiny and dull both on the carbon fiber there. Just beautiful carbon fiber. Although, you know, the aesthetics of the knife itself otherwise are not particularly spectacular, but I love that. Look at that carbon fiber. So what are my conclusions on this knife? My conclusions are this is a spectacular, very user-friendly OTF knife. You know, really the only user issues are, you know, slight tensioning needed on the pocket clip, slightly rough there. I will say that because the bevels on this knife do not come very high, I was a bit confused with my edge retention testing at first because it looked like it was starting to tear paper early, but when I actually felt the knife and investigated, it wasn't. It was just because the knife is it's steeply beveled, so the knife was pushing through the paper and kind of tearing it rather than sliding through like a full flat grind would. So it wasn't that the edge got dull, it was just the steepness of the bevels on this. But yes, this is a spectacular, very user-friendly OTF knife. If you're going to daily carry one, you know, everyday carry one, this is probably the best option that I have run into yet, especially with that Magnacut blade that's not going to rust or require a lot of maintenance from you. Price-wise, now, if you look on Smoky Mountain Knife Works' website, you are going to see this knife with the fat carbon fiber and the Magnacut blade at about $560. That is not accurate. If you call the store and talk to them, you are going to find that they are selling this knife in store for $400. So if you call them and you get them to sell it to you that way or buy it in the store, they will sell it to you for $160 cheaper than it is currently listed online. I asked them about that when I was there at the store recently. They said, yeah, it's just our website's not very good. So definitely give them a call. Get you one of these while they last. They have the Manticore X. They have the smaller ones too with this blue carbon fiber. Spectacular OTF. Go out and get you one. Have a nice day.